Hey there. So maybe some of you have heard about elite athletes like LeBron James or Michael Phelps are catching on to the importance of heart rate variability, or HRV as I'll be calling it for short. Now, it turns out it's not just for elite athletes, and new technologies are making real-time knowledge about your HRV, data available to anyone. The Whoop, which is what LeBron James kind of made famous, is about $500, I think, the last time I checked. The new technology that's put out by HeartMath that I'm including in Centering for Wisdom programs now is significantly less. And it gives you data in real time, which the Whoop also didn't do. But that's not really what the main focus is here. For today, I want to discuss what heart rate variability is and, more importantly, why it matters for your health. So, perhaps you've heard about it from athletes or other things in the media. I feel like it shows up here and there about health, but it's way more fascinating than you probably realize. So I want to try to make some of that science and the practice of it and techniques and ways to measure it a little simple for you. So to start, I want to invite you to experience this physically. I want to invite you to take a big breath in and do it in a second, and then slowly exhale as you extend the exhalation. So we'll do it together here. So take a deep breath in, and then as you slowly exhale, go ahead. Pay attention to what you're feeling in your heart region as you exhale. If you need to do another breath, go ahead and take an in-breath in, but really extend that exhalation. Pay attention to what you feel in your heart region, and then follow any sensations outward from your heart or your core area towards your shoulders and hips, your arms and legs, and your fingers and toes as you exhale. Do you feel that? Okay, just pay attention to that for a second because we're going to unpack what's happening there. What you feel happening in your body is key to understanding heart rate variability and how it connects to your health. So let's unpack some of the science behind it and why it matters if you really want to stop and then even reverse the cycle of chronic stress that you might be experiencing and all the cascade of health challenges that come with that chronic stress, burnout, and overwhelm. So we'll start as simply as possible. The math and the science behind it gets kind of complicated, but the good thing is you don't need to know all that. You can just know the basics to know why it's important. So stated as simply as possible, when you exhale like that, especially when you extend your exhale, it's like you're putting the brakes on your nervous system. It's like you're telling things to slow down and calm down. Conversely, when you inhale, you're putting your foot on the accelerator. When you inhale, your heart rate speeds up and other processes in your body. So heart rate variability is linked to the balancing energies between your body, and we'll break down the different parts of the body, but between your entire body's system of accelerator and brakes. So just think of it as inhale, accelerator, exhale, brakes. That's the basic idea, and the balance between them is what yields your heart rate variability. Now, HRV, heart rate variability, is all about balance. It's the balance between the accelerator and the brakes in your system. And you know, if you want to perform at your best and feel healthy and well, you need to find the right balance, right? We talk about getting the balance between work and rest, between sleep and getting things done and finding times for play and connecting with others, right? We're all kind of seeking that balance. But the cool thing is that true balance is not just this static state of like equal accelerator and equal brake, and then you find it and you just stay there, right? Balance is a dynamic state. And that same thing is true for heart rate variability. And we can use this to your advantage to actually heal yourself kind of from the bottom up, from your body up into your mental health. The same is true of that balance for your heart rate variability. It turns out that your HRV is linked to balance throughout your entire being, your entire body. Physically, physiologically, emotionally, and even at the level of spirituality and intuition. I think it was just last week I talked about the freeze frame technique as a way to access intuition and your spiritual heart. Talking a little bit more about the physical and emotional heart this time. So your heart rate, which is just like number of beats per minute, along with its variability, is controlled by your autonomic nervous system. You might remember some of this from biology class in high school or something. Your autonomic nervous system controls all the automatic processes in your body, like breathing, the release of hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, the stress hormones, or DHEA, which is the more healthy calming hormone that, again, balances the adrenaline and cortisol, and literally millions of other automatic processes that your brain and your body are constantly monitoring and adjusting just to help you stay in balance, to help you stay healthy, and frankly, just to keep you alive and conscious. There's constant balance, dynamic balance happening. So you kind of get the sense for how heart rate variability is linked to all these other different systems. So your ANS, your autonomic nervous system, is made up of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. Again, you might remember this from biology class way back. Now, an easy way to remember this, two different pieces, is I always remember it as P, parasympathetic, stands for peace. So P, parasympathetic, peace. So your parasympathetic nervous system, when it's activated, like when you extend that exhale like we did together, that will decrease your heart rate and slow things down. That's putting the brakes on. That's the peace. Your sympathetic nervous system is more like the accelerator. It's activated when you inhale, and it increases heart rate and all kinds of other things happening. Now, because if we know that it's linked to the breath like this, and you're always breathing as long as you're alive, you know that the sympathetic and the parasympathetic are constantly balancing and moving back and forth, and your heart rate is also therefore going up and down at regular or irregular intervals. So even though it might not be obvious right away, the more variability you have in the time between each heartbeat, which is your heart rate variability, the more balanced and healthy your nervous system is, because it's in that state of dynamic balance. So unlike just measuring your resting heart rate, which probably all of us have done at some point in our lives, could be as low as, say, around 40 if you're in really, really good cardiovascular health, or maybe upwards of 70, 80, 90 minutes just resting heart rate per minute. But that doesn't tell you anything about heart rate variability. HRV goes deeper into what your heart is telling you about how balanced you are. And this is where it becomes really powerful to use things like the inner balance sensor and to learn techniques that help you to first just short intervals increase your heart rate variability and coherence, but then over time create a baseline shift so that your resting HRV state also changes. Now, because of that constant balancing between the parasympathetic, right, that's the peace, the exhale, and the sympathetic, the inhale, the more active, because of that constant balancing between them, the amount of time between each heartbeat that you have fluctuates constantly. And this is what gives you an HRV score. I'm not even going to try to go into the math of how they figure this out. I don't even know, but let's just say scientists smarter than all of us here figured that out. What we do know, though, is that more variability in your heart rate means that your parasympathetic and your sympathetic nervous systems are working together in harmony to keep you in a healthy state of balance, in that dynamic balance. On the other hand, when your autonomic nervous system is completely overwhelmed or shut down, like when you feed it chronic stress and you reach that state of this constant overwhelm and burnout, it can actually just shut down those processes, and then it stops regulating that variability, and then your variability goes down. So that means that higher HRV measurements indicate or show that you're in a more optimal state of health, of resilience, of efficient energy use, because it indicates that your physical, your mental, and emotional systems are in a state of being flexible, adaptable, and ready to help you just go about your day with a minimal amount of energy and stress. When your HRV readings are high, you're in a state that we call coherence, and I did a previous post about what we mean by coherence. And we say it's coherent because this means that your heart, your brain, your whole nervous system, your hormonal systems, and thousands, probably millions of other processes throughout your body are all optimized to work together. Again, scientists can actually put these together as waveforms and see that they are what we call phase locked. They're all working together at the same time. They're coherent or aligned, and they're working to support each other. On the other hand, when you have lower HRV and your system is out of balance and your brain and your body's systems are actually working against each other, those wavelengths are not lining up and they're chaotic and they're all over the place. Think of this like driving your car with one foot on the brake and the other foot on the gas or the accelerator. You can imagine the damage this would do to your car over time. It might start with just your brake pads or your engine, but before long, everything is going to break down. The tension or friction uses more energy if you have both and they're not working together. And that means if you're out of coherence and your heart rate variability is low, you're going to have less energy to do things like think and plan, to be present with the people that you love, to feel good and emotionally balanced, and to make good decisions. You know, if you drive your car like this, it breaks down. And the same thing is true with your body. If you stay in that state long enough of chronic stress and overwhelm and low coherence, it will shut down. And it does that as a way to protect you. It's your body's wisdom getting your attention. It's shutting down to protect you from doing more damage so that you don't completely destroy your car. Maybe you have the chance to come back and rebuild it before everything is totally broken. Same with your body. So if you're in that state now, the cool thing about this is that there's hope. There's ways to do this. So optimal HRV levels mean that you have a higher capacity for self-regulation, for adaptability, for emotional and cognitive flexibility, and for resilience. That's why some doctors and researchers are saying now that HRV should be considered one of the most important physiological indicators of overall health that we can measure. Physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. I mentioned LeBron and Michael Phelps at the beginning of this video post. So athletes have started to figure out that cardiovascular health through exercise and being in a state of optimal recovery so that you're ready to go into more load to either train harder or perform at an event like a race or a game or something like that. They know that cardiovascular health can increase HRV and that when HRV is high, they're in an optimal state. So they plan their training around that. Similarly, if you're in the spiritual space or the mindfulness space or yoga or contemplative prayer, you probably are familiar with different breath practices. Controlled breathing or pranayama in the yoga practice, mindful breathing can also increase HRV and coherence. But here's where it gets really interesting. If you really want to shift your baseline HRV to healthier levels, cardiovascular health and breathing can help. But really, to get deep into it and to have meaningful, lasting shifts, you have to pay attention to the role of your thoughts and, even more importantly, to the role and effect that your emotions have on HRV. Now, you can actually test this yourself using the inner balance sensor from HeartMath, which I got a few months ago and have been playing with. And if you're like me, when you first begin to practice, when you get it, you use an app with it, and it gives you your HRV scores in real time. And the app comes in different sort of challenge settings, and it starts at the very first challenge level. So when I first got mine and started practicing, and if you end up getting one, then you can see that your HRV in that lowest challenge level can shift into a coherent state just by slowing down and focusing on your breathing. But what I found was, in order to move to the higher challenge levels or to maintain a state of coherence for longer periods of time, that I had to move beyond just the breath alone. The breath alone would not sustain it. What I had to do was add in the genuine cultivation and sensation of emotions, positive emotions, like gratitude. I've really found gratitude to honestly work the best of all the ones that I've tried. Care for others and other positive emotions. That's the only way that you really create lasting baseline shifts in resting HRV. And that's where the HeartMath techniques, combined with tracking your progress with the sensor and the app, become so powerful. So that's a little bit about what HRV is and why it's so important. It's really an indicator of just how coherent and aligned all the different systems and parts of your body and your experience are working together and supporting you being in an optimal state for thinking, for being present, for physical healing, for connecting with others, and for making wise decisions. So I mentioned earlier that the Whoop HRV monitor, I think was retailing for around $500 the last time I looked. The inner balance sensor is significantly cheaper than that, and I'm integrating it into my Centering for Wisdom coaching program as part of the tuition, which will be going live in 2022. So along with all the techniques, as well as the other Centering for Wisdom practices that I've done in the past. So I'm kind of upgrading the program that I've put out there before by allowing you to track your HRV shift in real time, as well as to learn these techniques that are kind of more on the go than a daily contemplative practice that you kind of set aside for a time where you kind of go inward and close your eyes. These are ones that you can do in a more active state. Now, my goal with all the work that I do and put out here and in the Centering for Wisdom coaching program is to help people like you get out of chronic stress, overwhelm, and burnout, and to get in touch with your inner resources for wisdom and compassion, and to do that in a spiritual contemplative space that connects you to God or something higher or bigger than yourself. Let me leave you, though, with this impressive list of other conditions that are associated with low HRV or autonomic imbalance, as we've talked about it. And all of these have been documented and studied and published and verified and validated by scientists. All of these conditions can be helped by shifting your baseline HRV. So yes, I focus on burnout and chronic stress and developing a deeper contemplative practice, but all these other things can potentially be helped by increasing your baseline HRV. So here's the list. It's depression, hypoglycemia, panic disorder, sleep disorder, asthma, fatigue, dizziness, nausea, irritable bowel syndrome, fibromyalgia, hypertension, chemical sensitivity to chemicals in your environment, excessive premenstrual syndrome symptoms, anxiety, migraines, and heart arrhythmia. All of these has been scientifically studied as conditions that are linked with low HRV and that can be improved or in some cases cured through increased HRV coherence, along with the other kind of healthy lifestyle things that we talk about in any good coaching program. So do I have your attention? I hope so, because this is really kind of groundbreaking stuff that used to be only in the domain of, $1 million labs that scientists had the tools to, and now it's so easy and accessible to measure it and know where you are and to learn these simple techniques and practices and integrate them into your daily life. So if I have your attention, if this is fascinating to you the way it is to me, or you're just looking for something to kind of get to make a shift, especially as we get into the new year and those New Year's resolutions, stay tuned. I'll be back with more updates about what I'm doing with the Centering for Wisdom assessment, which is part of the program I've done before. I'm updating that as well, along with the coaching program. So in the meantime, I hope you're having a wonderful Advent if you're celebrating that particular liturgical season or a holiday season, whatever tradition you might be in, and that you continue to find ways to deepen your daily centering contemplative practices and techniques. Next time, I'll be discussing how a daily practice of centering prayer or contemplative practice can help to shift your baseline emotional state, and we'll explore more of how that emotional state connects to increases in your HRV coherence as well. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.